Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Baumhauer's Victory Grill as we get set for tonight's edition of the Nick Saban Show, getting set for the Saturday meeting with the Aggies of Texas A&M. The coach is alongside. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I am well, thank you. And you know Brett Hudson, of course.
Hey, Brett, glad to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me, Coach.
So how's things? You have a decent week so far? Everybody relatively healthy on the practice field?
Well, you know, I think when you have a bye week, you put guys into one of three categories. You know, guys either improve,
right?
They stay stagnant, do what they have to do to get by, and then you have some guys who backslide, who just can't stay focused. And, you know, I think that we have a lot of people now that are addicted to motivation.
Interesting.
I mean, so to just go practice for a week just because you want to get better, they don't understand that concept. All right? They have to have somebody dogging them. They have to have some challenge from the media. They have to have somebody say something bad about them on the internet. I mean, there's got to be some external factor.
They just won't do it.
That makes them want to go. So, but I think a lot of that comes with maturity. I think a lot of that comes with players who have experience and understand the challenges that are, you know, ahead for them in terms of the competition and the better teams that, you know, we're going to play starting this week. So, you know, it's just how do you have the maturity to stay focused? And where does that maturity come from? It really comes from, you know, what kind of discipline do you have? And, you know, sometimes I told the players this week, I said, look, you guys all think you get discipline on the field. You don't get discipline on the field. You get discipline when you get up in the morning. Mm-hmm. You know, because you're either a disciplined person or you're not. So do you get strength on the field or do you get strength in the weight room and then you use it on the field?
Exactly.
All right, so if you make the right choices and decisions and be a disciplined person, when you get up in the morning and do everything right all day, you go on the field and be a better player because you already have discipline. It becomes a habit, and that becomes who you are. So kind of an interesting, you know, way that we try to get these guys to stay focused.
When did that start changing? I mean, it wasn't that way when you were college age, when I was college age. We're a couple of years apart. But when did you see this starting to change?
I think it changed with the information, you know, network changing. You know, the internet, people communicate more, people get a lot more things thrown at them. So, you know, things don't become internal anymore, they become external. You know, there's always something out here that you're hearing, listening, and responding to rather than just making a decision that I want to do this, and this is what I have to do to go do it, and I'm going to get committed to doing all those things the right way. So I think it all started to change with that. You probably know more about when that all changed because I don't do any of that stuff.
Hey, I'm not on social media either. I'm no Facebook, no Twitter, nothing. I guess I'm old school, but there's nothing wrong with that either.
That's two of us, but I'm sure this young buck here is on it.
Yeah, I'm sure Brett is. Brett's all over that kind of stuff.
Y'all are living better lives not being on it. I envy the both of you.
Well, with that said, welcome to the show, sir. And you have the first question from the media for the coach.
Ooh, the honors.
Yes, sir.
Wanted to pick your brain on kind of that motivation that you mentioned going into the open week and how you keep players motivated when there isn't that motivation out there through social media or whatever. Do you anticipate, with this being a year where you've got 2 open weeks in the regular season, do you anticipate having a better open week the second time because you went through it this first time? Or how do you think approaching that second open week is different because you've had one earlier in the year?
I don't think there's a lot of difference. I think what we try to do is we try to really give the players a sense of purpose even when we have a bye week. You know, kind of understanding that they're used to playing games, they're used to having a challenge presented to them, and now they don't. So you try to present a challenge to them each day in terms of, you know, we make sort of an individual you know, these are the things you need to improve on for each individual on the team. So kind of a quality control individually, collectively as a group, collectively on offense, defense, and special teams. So they have sort of a sense of purpose and you're not just going out there to practice. And I think that helps. Every day, we never go on the field where we don't present something that the players are going to see in the future in terms of a future opponent. So we might say we're working on, Arkansas, Tennessee, whatever today. So we haven't been working on just Texas A&M for 2 weeks because the players would get bored with that. So we're giving them a challenge every day, mentally and hopefully physically, to be able to get better. And then we do a little more practicing good on good, when we're in these situations. So it gives the players an opportunity to compete against a better player. So hopefully that motivates them to try to want to get better. But I think that is the real challenge, though, is, people get, and I used the term before, addicted to motivation, somebody motivating them all the time. But when you talk to somebody like Kobe Bryant or some of the great players that we've had and people that we've had that come and talk to the players, the one thing that sticks out that's very different about them, they are very self-motivated. I mean, they know what they want to accomplish. They work hard to do it. They're very committed to it. They don't need anything else or anybody else to sort of affect, how they go about what they do. And the more players you have like that on your team, obviously, the better off you're going to be.
Let's go up to Florence, Alabama. Rowdy is on the phone. Rowdy, welcome in. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Eli. I hope you and the coach both are doing well.
Yes, sir. What's your question for the coach tonight?
Coach Saban, I have a comment, and it's going to lead into a question, if I may, sir.
Okay.
Now that Tua has been hurt, social, or not social media, but sports media and radio talk shows are saying that Alabama is a little bit down, and they're maybe not a number one contender for the national championship. Well, I believe, sir, that we'll take on Arkansas and beat them for two reasons. One, Alabama's a great football team without Tua, and also everyone knows that Arkansas is a little bit down. The program is. But once we take care of business with Arkansas, and then we have a week of rest, and then when we beat LSU, whether it's by 1 or 100 or maybe 10 points, I would say then that the world or the national college spectrum will have to recognize us then as a number one contender. What do you say to that, Coach?
Well, Rowdy, I'm kind of going day to day here, all right, play to play, quarter to quarter. So you've kind of looked at this whole thing a little bit further ahead than me, because, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but, every game is an important game. And I really believe that, when you see South Carolina beat Georgia, you see Illinois beat Wisconsin, I don't really think that you can ever take anything for granted, as a player or a coach. I think that, the hardest thing with these players right now is to get them to play to a standard. I always say, do you understand what your capability gap is? Do you know what your capability gap is? Your capability gap is what you're doing now versus what you're capable of doing. Okay, if there's a gap in there, you're leaving money on the table. All right, so you're not doing things as well as you're capable of doing it. I don't care if it's in school. I don't care if it's as a person. I don't care if it's as a football player. All right, so, but the hardest thing to get these guys to understand is they're not really competing just against their opponent. They're not really just competing against the scoreboard just to win the game. They're really competing against themselves because they're ultimately going to be judged and measured by how they perform to the standard that they perform to on a consistent basis. All right, but yet so many people are affected by what's the score, who we playing, how important the game is, as to how they approach the game and how they go about getting ready to play the game. But yet the standard should be, I should be trying to play as well as I can play because that's what I'm going to be measured by. I mean, but that's the hard thing to get people to sort of understand. All right, but if you just do a little self-assessment, all right, what's the capability gap? How am I doing relative to what am I capable of doing? All right, and that will tell you exactly where you're at, all right, in terms of who you are as a person, and are you reaching your full potential, And are you really trying to be the best that you can be? You know, I said this the other day, you know, I asked our players one week, why did you come to Alabama? And, you know, they gave me all kind of answers. All right, but then I told them, I said, this is why you came. You came to be the best player you could be, and you came to win a championship. That's why you came here. But there's a responsibility that goes with that. And that responsibility is every one of you have to do more, not less. You think you're here and you think we're good and you can do less, you need to do more. You need to be more disciplined. You be more committed, more intensity, more toughness, more, doing everything you can do to be the best version of yourself you can be. So it's not about doing less, it's about doing more. And that's why you came here. Because there's a lot of other players that went other places because they thought it would be easier. They thought they'd play faster, there wouldn't be as much competition, and every now and then they'd win a big game, and every now and then they might even upset somebody, but they'll never have a chance to win a championship, but you do. All right, but that requires more. There's a responsibility that goes with that. So, you know, somebody said, I got asked the question just a little bit ago, do you like the motivation part of it? It's the most challenging part of it, all right, because it's not human nature to want to be the best you can be. It's human nature to do what you have to do to get by and be comfortable. And I tell the players that all the time. I said, you guys think you're working all the time so you can sit on the lawn chair and look out at the ocean. You know, that commercial,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
What is that, Corona?
Yeah.
You know, where the girl's sitting here and the guy's sitting here and they're
Exactly.
looking at and the birds chirping. That's what y'all working for? So you can be comfortable?
But you're right, breaking human nature has got to be the toughest assignment.
It is. We're working on it every day.
There you go. Let's take another phone call from San Diego, California. Greg is joining us on the phone. Hello, Greg. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Gold. First, Coach, I'd like to give you a compliment and say I hope someday ESPN does a story about you and Miss Terry's influence on these children, or these kids off the field.
Well, I
no doubt you
appreciate that.
dedicated yourself to helping them off the field, so thank you for those contributions.
I appreciate that. That's really
sir.
why we
The
do what
question
we
I
do.
have-
Go ahead, ask your question.
Out here in California, they're already talking about the LSU game. And my question to you is, inside the Malmore complex, you're focused on the Bama way. Are you keeping the kids focused, or what's happening different this year than maybe last year when it seems like things got away from you at this point in the season as we headed towards Clemson?
Well, you know, I think that a lot of things sort of influence that. I think that, you know, young people in this day and age are very influenced by external factors. You know, I always try to emphasize with our players, you know, you can't really do what you feel like doing. You got to choose to do the things that you need to do to be successful, and it takes a lot of discipline to do that. And it's the same way with trying to go through the season. You know, as you go through the season, I haven't counted up the practices, but about this time of the season, the players start getting a little bit bored with practice. They get bored in meetings. You know, you're going over the same thing. You're doing the same drills. You know, on Tuesday you have pretty much the same practice. On Wednesday you have pretty much the same practice. So you really have to get them to stay focused and pay attention to detail, because what happens is they start creating bad habits because they're not focused in practice. So I mean, I even talked to Tua this week about that. I said, look, you know, this first time I saw you all season not have your feet set exactly right when you threw the ball, and the ball died on you a couple times. All right, and he ended up being a little bit off. All right, so it's just little things like that. And it's not just him. It's just obvious when the quarterback does it. But the defensive backs don't use the right footwork to cover a guy or whatever it is, or linebackers don't adjust correctly to their gaps. So all these little things take a lot of mental energy and focus. Well, you know, I call it rat poison. All right, and you've heard that before, and I talked about it after the A&M game this time because I remember sitting in that same seat 2 years ago talking about it then. But, you know, when people put on the internet that a guy's a first-round draft pick, and people talk about you being the number one team in the country, and they talk about scoring 50 points a game, and that's all you hear, you know, cognitively it affects you. I mean, you hear it over and over and over and over. It affects you. All right, so, you know, we're trying to get players to understand that those things do not, the media, what the media says, even though it's an important part of, our business in terms of we're in the entertainment business, so what they do is very important. But what they say does not necessarily have value. The media never drafted a player. So if they say you're a first-round draft pick, that doesn't mean anything. The media has never drafted a player, not one player. In fact, when I was a coach at Miami, we used to feed the media misinformation because we didn't want anybody to know who we were going to draft. All right, so we would let them know that we really liked this guy when we really weren't going to draft him.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Perfect
sense.
I
mean, because if you're picking 16th, you don't want the team that's picking 15th to know who you're going to pick.
Sure.
I mean, and these things are so simple, and they shouldn't be very difficult to understand. And we have had players in our program, and I'm not going to mention any names, that have been sort of middle-of-the-road draft picks, and by having a great senior year, they catapulted themselves to be a first-round pick. We have had players who thought they were first-round picks, and the media even said they were first-round picks. That became fifth-round picks and third-round picks. All right, so this basically doesn't mean anything. And I don't think that any player should be at all affected, because I would bet you that most NFL teams have some players that will get drafted high that aren't even on their draft board yet because they haven't done the work on them. And they have other guys that were drafted high that are moving down on the board because they do work on them and find out things. So there's only one thing that matters. Keep performing. Create value for yourself by doing the right things. Play good. The one thing that you can control is how you play. That's the one thing that you can control. You really can't control what the media says. You really can't control what anybody else thinks. But you can control what you do by making the right choices and decisions and doing the right things, and create value for yourself. And then decide when the season's over, what is the best thing for me to do? And it's the same thing with, you're only as good as your last play when you're a player or you're a team. All right, so all you have to do is lose one game, like Georgia, South Carolina. All right, I mean, we got a similar game this week. All right, Tennessee coming here. All right, they're going to be underdogs and all that. We have to play well. All right, you can't not play well and then another team play pretty well and they're in the game, and then all of a sudden something happens and you end up, something bad happens.
Yeah.
So you have to make the choices and decisions that you're going to do the right things so that you can be the best version of yourself when you come to the competition. And it doesn't really matter who you play. All right, so we're not talking about the LSU game. We talk about the game that we have this week. But we do talk about, are we playing as a team well enough to beat the best teams that we play? And LSU is certainly going to be one of those teams. I can promise you that. Auburn will be too. All right, and we're going to play every game, one game at a time. If you get in the SEC championship game, you're going to play one of the best teams. And I guarantee if you get in the playoffs, you're going to play one of the best teams. So are we playing well enough as a team to be able to beat those teams? And that's what I keep harping on with our players, about the penalties and getting stopped 3 times in a row in the red zone and kicking 2 field goals and throwing an interception and giving all these teams these opportunities with these penalties that, making mental errors on defense that allows people to have big plays. I mean, you give good teams all those opportunities, they're going to take advantage of it, and it's going to be hard to overcome. So we can correct them now and make the choices and decisions to correct them now. All right, so, or you can choose to just have fun. We'll go have fun. Let's go have fun. You got a choice. You want to have fun or you want to win?
I'd rather win.
Me too.
Thank you very much. Definitely. Coach, we have a visitor right here to your right with a question at Baumhauer's. Good evening, sir.
Evening, Coach Saban. I had a question. Just get away from the football questions for a second. If you had never gotten into football, do you think there's another sport you might have played or coached?
Yeah, I liked them all. When I was coming up, I think I told this story before, but my grandma Saban made us all learn how to play the accordion, which I hated. I absolutely hated it. And I was the only boy, so all the girls, they liked it. My sister, my aunt, everybody liked it. I hated it. So I figured out when I was 9 years old that the only way that I could get out of practicing accordion was to play a sport. Because if I said I had to go to practice or I was going to go practice, it didn't matter if it was baseball, basketball, it didn't matter. She would let me out of it. So that's how I got out of playing accordion. I just went and practiced whatever I could practice. So I played whatever you could play just to get out of that.
You would have been a hit at the polka parties, though.
Wow, we had enough polka party players. But anyway, so I loved all the sports because I loved to compete, and I still liked. I even played tennis. I love playing golf. Not very good, but I like playing because I like the competition. And I think there's a lot of lessons that you can learn in competition. How to overcome adversity and the work that you have to do to try to get better at things. I told a player today that seemed to be struggling a little bit with his confidence, and he's kind of down about how he was playing. And, I said to him, you look like you're kind of down, but people that I know that are down and depressed, they're thinking about what happened in the past. And then you're very anxious on the field because you're worried about what's going to happen in the future. How about just focusing on what's in front of you right now, this play right here? Because the things that happened in the past are great learning opportunities for you so that you can do better now. So let's don't dwell negatively on those things. The only way you're going to affect the things that happen in the future is to get it right now. So focus on what's happening now. So learn from your lessons of the past, focus on what's happening now, and that will take care of the future for you. So I think one of the biggest difficulties that players have and people have is how do you deal with failings? And to me, the number one thing is if you're going to be successful, the people who are successful deal with their failings better than the other folks. And I always use the example, Ty Cobb. You probably don't know who Ty Cobb is. He's the greatest baseball player that ever played. Played back in the early 1900s. He's got the all-time leading batting average for his career, and he played like 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he played a couple years. He played for a long time. So he's got the all-time greatest batting average in the history of baseball. And he failed 63% of the time. He batted .327. Is that right? 333 or something.
Yeah.
337, something like that. Okay? But he failed 63% of the time. So how he actually handled his failings is what helped him be successful. So if you don't use those things to your advantage, even when bad things happen, it's going to affect how successful you can be in the future. And that's a constant sort of thing that we have to try to get our players to be able to, because they're so outcome oriented, and outcomes are really distractions. You have to be focused on what do I have to do to get the outcome. So I forget what your question is, but I hope I answered it.
This show and our games are heard all around the world now with the internet and with satellite radio, and we've got military folks sending us notes all the time and Bama fans from everywhere. A question that came into the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com from Linda in Armidale, Australia.
Wow.
And she says, Coach, greetings from down under. During your career, have you ever recruited or have a team member, a punter in particular, from Australia?
Well, Jesse Williams was from Australia.
Exactly.
And, we have worked out some punters, and there are several very, very good punters in the NCAA right now that are Australian.
Right.
Jesse Williams, the recruiting story behind Jesse Williams is one of the all-time greats for me. I mean, I tell this all the time.
Sure.
Arthur was Jesse's dad, so I would have to call at like 6 o'clock in the morning and it'd be like 11 o'clock at night there or whatever, or I'd call them at night and they'd be in their pajamas, just getting up in the morning.
Right.
All right, so, and the only way I could communicate is we'd do this FaceTime stuff.
Okay.
And, Jesse only played like a year or so of football in Australia. Then he came to Arizona Western Junior College and played 2 years. And in 2 years, he was the #1 defensive lineman in the country. He's like 6'5", 315 pounds, and can run 4.6. And he was a rugby player. And incidentally, they made me, I'm an honorary member of the
Really?
Aborigines national rugby team in Australia, just for this lady to know. And I have my jersey hanging in the closet at home. But anyway, Arthur and his wife never, ever been to America, never knew anything about American college, never knew anything about American football. They didn't know what training table was. They didn't know what study table was. They didn't know anything about it. So all I kept doing was doing these video conferences with them, and I would keep talking to them, and I was trying to talk them into coming on a visit.
Sure.
Because I knew I was going to have to take a home visit out there, which was going to be about a 20-hour flight at some point in time. So one day I call, and Arthur says, Jesse's dad, he says, I know where I want Jesse to go. And my heart just sunk. I mean, it just sunk like we lost this guy. Because, I'd never been there. They'd never been here.
Sure.
They never saw Alabama. They'd never visited American college. And I said, well, what did you decide, Arthur? And he said, well, I want him to come to Alabama. And I said, well, how did you come to that? And he says, well, there's 25 schools calling here. And the only team they ever talk about is Alabama. So from my standpoint,
might as well go to Alabama.
You all must be the best.
There you go.
And that's where I want my son to go. And that was it. That was the end of it. We got the best defensive lineman in recruiting only because everybody else helped us out by talking bad about us.
That's great. I'm trying to remember who it was. One of our linemen years ago said, everywhere I went for recruiting, they said, we want you to come here because we want you to beat Alabama. Same basic idea. And finally the kid said, well, heck, I might as well go to Alabama. Every one of their games, obviously, is a big game, and it worked out.
What do you like most about being a coach? Is it X's and O's? Is it the mental part of the game, or is it the part like Kevin Elko brings, or what is it exactly that is your favorite part?
Well, I think it would be probably threefold in no particular order. First of all, I like the technical part of the game. Being a secondary guy, I mean, you have to understand you got 5 or 6 defensive backs out there. You got patterns. You want to pattern match. You got receiver locations. You're trying to figure out who does what when, how you can get your players to play better, how you can pressure the quarterback. So I do like the strategic part of the game, the game planning. I really like coaching and teaching the players. I enjoy going to the meetings every day. A lot of head coaches don't go to individual meetings. I always go to individual meetings every day and sort of coach the players and coach them on the field, all the time because I enjoy the teaching part, of what I do. And then probably the third part is, and probably the thing I enjoy most is when you're a part of a team, you really have some special relationships with a lot of people on your team. Players, coaches, everybody in the organization. And it makes you feel like you're a part of a big old family. And, there's a lot of togetherness, and you have a lot of good things that happen in your family, and sometimes you have some things that you have to overcome, and sometimes you have some tremendous disappointments and lessons that have to be learned and taught. But you never do any of those things without respecting everybody in the organization. So I think those relationships in the organization is probably, and with players, the thing that I enjoy most. And, something that never goes away, when you have a relationship with a guy like that, when they come back and see you, like Reuben Foster, I hadn't seen Reuben Foster for 3 years. When he comes back and sees me, it's like he never left. I mean, it's like it was yesterday he was playing and I was talking to him about something he did or didn't do. And it's that way with every guy. Rolando McClain came to see me the other day, and it's like I really had to tell myself, he's not playing for you anymore. I mean, but that's how the relationships kind of are. And because you have those, and I guess it's respect, that you have for them and what they did, it just never seems to change, and that's pretty special.
Coach Pee Wee joined us earlier in the show talking about basketball, but he is back to offer the first question on the phone to you this evening. Pee Wee, welcome back, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So, Pee Wee, you coach in all sports now. You coach basketball too?
Yeah, he was talking about he was discussing 3-point shooting with Antoine Petway.
And Pee Wee, I thought you were an offensive line guy.
I'm a fan, Coach.
That's good. We appreciate it.
Coach, last week we probably played to date our best game on the offensive line. And I was just wondering, number one, what is Chris O's status? Will he be able to go if we need him this week? And how does the lineup of Evan and in our center and Deontay, how does that differ from when we have Evan in there or Chris in there instead of Deontay?
Right. Well, Chris has been able to practice this week, so he'll probably be available in this game, maybe in an emergency, kind of an emergency basis or whatever. But I don't think he's practiced enough for us to say he should go in and start the game. We like the combination of guys that we played with last week. Dickerson gives us a more powerful guy at center. Chris is probably a little more athletic and certainly has the knowledge and experience. Both guys are good communicators when it comes to making the calls on the line. So we feel fortunate to have two guys that can play winning football at that position. I think it also, when Deontay Brown plays, he's a much more powerful guy, playing right guard. So now you have if you look in total, you have a more physical inside three, right? Which to me, when you run zone plays and those types of things, you want to be able to move the guys on the line of scrimmage. And when you have power guys, they can do that, and it displaces people, and it makes it harder for the linebackers to fit, the runs.
Coach, you were asking or talking about communications. That leads me to our first question from the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. Jonathan in Tuscumbia says, hey, Coach, with so many younger players getting valuable playing time on defense, can you comment on the challenges of communication as you make in-game adjustments? Thank you, and Roll Tide.
Well, I think that communication is so vital on defense, and, we always practice with noise. People that come to Thursday practice is really closed, but every now and then we let somebody in that supports the program or that we know or are friends of the program or whatever. But everybody that comes says, how can you function, on Thursdays with the noise in this place?
Sure.
Because we always practice indoor on Thursday, and you cannot literally talk to the person next to you. And the reason for that is we want players to have to be able to communicate with hand signals and not be able to use anything in voice on offense or defense. And we do it every week, whether we play home or away. And when you take someone's ability to communicate away, the mental errors just go up dramatically. And what it creates is everybody has to be more responsible. Like, we want all of our players to know the signals. So when they look at the sidelines, whether you're playing offense and we have a sign up and then we signal the play or whatever, and the same thing on defense, we want everybody to know what the signals are.
Sure.
So you don't have to depend on somebody in practice telling you what to do, which happens a lot, especially with young players. So this is one issue, is pre-snap communication. This is whether we're playing before we ever get something that we have to adjust to. That is really a problem with young players because they want to depend on somebody else to tell them what is the defense and help them with their responsibility, which gives them security, but it's not the best way to play because sometimes you can't communicate. And then the second part of it is every week in the games, we get something that is completely different from what we practice with the players during the course of the week. And I've talked about this before. When you have really good understanding of the basic concepts and you understand the big picture, then it becomes pretty easy for you to be able to adapt the things, in the game. Well, when you have freshmen playing and you have young players, they try to memorize what they do.
Sure, their job.
Okay, but they don't understand the big picture. So now when you want to take a concept in the game and say, okay, they're doing this, we need to do that.
Sure.
They have a really, really hard time. Just like, okay, we can box, we can bunch, we can three-way, we can bingo, a three-man bunch. Just those four things. We got about 8, but I'll just start with those 4. All right, so if we're in a game and I say we're going to bingo the bunch, all right, and they do a different route that's not really hard to match,
right.
With those 3 guys in a bunch and your guys taking, whether it's one stays one, you got this guy, and the guy on the point has first guy to the flat. Well, nobody runs the flat. You don't have anybody, so you're in trouble.
Yep.
All right, so you got to go to something else. Well, I can do that with the DBs. You see me on the sidelines. I come over there with the DBs, and I'll just say, they're doing this, we're going to do this. Like last year, LSU was putting the formation into the boundary. Because we thought they were going to run the ball, we were checking the 3-deep zone. So they'd motion the guy to the field and run diagonal curl, which is a 3-deep killer. So I just said, that's called laser. I said, we're going to lasso, so you run across, and we're going to play cut, and they won't have that play anymore. So I can just go to the DBs and do that like that, and we're done. It's done. So then that play never showed up anymore after you do it.
Sure.
All right, so when these young guys, you tell them to do something like that, and they look at you literally, like you just told them somebody went down.
Deer in the headlights.
Oh, man, it is. So it is more difficult to make adjustments because of the inexperience, and you just can't coach experience. These guys are really working hard. They really try hard. They're really dedicated to knowing and trying to prepare for the game. But they don't have the background and the knowledge and experience to be able to adapt and adjust sometimes.
But the good thing is the freshmen become sophomores and so on, and they get a whole heck of a lot better. Jonathan, thank you for your call. Freshman from West Monroe, Louisiana, the only passing touchdown of the ball game last week, as he hooked up with Miller Forrestall, the junior tight end from Cartersville, Georgia. Glad you're with us. Don't forget, Alabama and Arkansas coming up on Saturday. We'll have coverage for you starting at 3. The kickoff is at 6 o'clock at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alex Scarborough from ESPN.com is with us. I'll tell you, the colorful lights last week, all of that was spectacular to see. The game lights, though, what I call the white lights, I don't know what the correct term is, but the vividness of the stadium, of the play, is something that really stood out to me.
Oh, 100%. Not that the stadium lacked anything before, but it almost brought it to life even more. And I know the players talking this week just loved it. It brought them up a little bit during the pregame. Incredible atmosphere.
In the previous years, you had those ribbon advertisements, that ribbon that goes around the upper deck. And if there was a green advertisement, there'd be a green tint to the field. If there was yellow or blue or whatever, you didn't get that last week. The brightness of the LEDs and the way they were aimed and so on. I didn't know how much of a change it was going to make. It was breathtaking in that everything was so clear to see.
Oh yeah, it's like Bryant-Denny got an HD, 4K, whatever you want to call it now.
Whatever it is. Right now here at the restaurant, part of our regular weekly, when we come back, the coach is always spending time with the fans. He is out taking pictures and so on, and we've got him now making his way back up to the stage after another picture or two. A lot of folks from the Knicks Kids Foundation always make their way to the restaurant to join us on the program. And Coach, I don't need to tell you what time of the year it is. It's almost Halloween time, and we know what happens on Halloween. At least I'm gathering that's what happened, because we've got birthday cakes starting to make their way up to the stage right here.
Wow.
And you're not going to be with us next week. You'll be on the phone with us on the bye week for a short visit, but we've got folks who have been baking birthday cakes for you.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. I guess we should be really thankful that we continue to have birthdays.
It beats the heck out of the alternative. Sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
It sure does.
Not that I'm interested in getting much older, but
hey, age. You're a young man. I mean, age, people always laugh, say, "Well, age is only a number." So, but you do. I mean, you're out there, you're running, you're doing. It is just a number.
Well, it is, and I feel great, and I enjoy what I'm doing, and it's just. I don't feel any different than I did,
Exactly.
20 years ago. So try to take care of yourself the best you can and be thankful for what you got.
Well,
and,
Coach, here comes a beautiful cake.
I'm certainly thankful for these ladies and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful cake.
That
How
is a
about that
gorgeous
cake?
It's crimson and white. It's got it's a football field with a big crimson and white football in the middle.
It says there's no rat poison on
Is
it.
that what it says? That's great. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
That's great. And that cake is big enough to serve just about everybody here in the restaurant.
Yeah, and I think we should give everybody some.
Yeah.
Let's give everybody some.
We'll start cutting it up. Alex, why don't you? Well, let's take a question right here to your right, Coach. While you're reading the birthday card, we have a visitor here at the restaurant. Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Coach. I'm Anna Faye Shaw. You and I have a special bond because you have my birthday.
Oh, is that right?
One week from today, you are going to be 68.
That's right.
And I'm going to be 80. And I'm still working. So 12 years from now, you're going to be 80. And I'm going to be 92. And I plan to be here. And I want you to still be the coach at Alabama.
Okay.
There you go.
I got it.
And,
You know,
and
I want to say something to you. You look so good for your age. I thought you were going to say you were 68 just like me.
No. I was 12 when you were born. So, in addition to still being here at 80, I want you to be hoisting another national championship trophy.
Okay. We'll keep working on it.
There you go. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate it. And happy birthday to you.